but can I be more disciplined in how I eat? Can I show up fully to train? Can I make difficult decisions at 4 a.m. when I don't want to run? Can I literally change who I am to become a better version and use running just as a vehicle?
Chad, welcome to the podcast.
What is happening? This is like Christmas morning for me. I've been building it up. I've been going through the advent calendar the last 24 days, and boom, it's here.
I felt the same way waiting on this guy to get out. I saw you hyping it and promoting it. It took a while to get my hands, and
for 6 months.
We got 2 of them. Yeah.
6 months. My publisher was like, all right, the pre-sales are going to start in June, and we're going to launch it in December. I was like, well, I don't understand. What's the reason? I don't know. I'm so ignorant to how the book industry works. And when you sign, I signed with Ben Bella Books and Penguin Random House, and they really take control of it. And they're like, well, they gave me all the fluff reasons. Like, we want to really, have time to build up some momentum. And really what it was we want to see if anybody's going to buy it. We don't want to run all these books if nobody's going to buy it. And so I was like, oh, okay, now it makes sense. So. Yeah.
Well, in a USA Today bestseller, a lot of people bought them, and a lot of people more still will keep buying them. Not because of just this show, but one, you're on a podcast circuit, but the book's great.
Thanks, brother.
And I say that as someone who, professional development junkie, personal development, I'm always looking for ways to improve. There's a lot of crap in the market. There's a lot of books I start, I get a chapter or 2 in, and I'm like, I'm out.
Yeah.
I loved yours. It was great.
I appreciate that.
And I say that because you and I know each other from social media, but like this is our first face-to-face.
Ever. Which is so crazy because I feel like we've been bros forever. In my mind, we've gone to college football games together. We barbecued together. Like in my mind, I was telling my wife this morning, I was like, oh, I'm on Jake's podcast. And she goes, who's Jake? I said, Jake, Jake. And she was like, I was like, Jake Thompson, like Jake. And she was like, yeah, no, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, we've been friends forever. She goes, have you ever met the guy? And I was like, oh, shit. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
No. She goes, well, where do you know him from? And I was like, from around the way. I was like, I don't even remember how or where we met. I knew I was just an avid follower of what I came to the conclusion. I was just an avid follower because your energy, your energy never lies, and your energy transcends a computer screen. And so when you find people that have the same desire, I want to hang around people whose life I want to replicate. And so I put you in my circle and say, man, I want some of that. I want some of what that guy has. And by what you have is energy. And I think that's how I just infiltrated your circle.
I was about to say, I noticed a few of the posts and then started following you and saw the running and to the same degree, like the energy you bring, what you do. And the cool part that separated is I sent you a note when you were training for one of your races.
Yeah.
I think your marathon.
Yeah.
And your team sent me this nice little gift box back with a shirt. And I was so shocked. I was like, this guy, this is my kind of guy. Like he gets it because you get relationships. I've been looking forward to this since we booked it, since you agreed. And so let's talk a little bit. Let's talk running first, man, because you talk about it in the book, and anybody that follows you on social sees you running, sees the run. And as a guy who does not love it whatsoever, part of me, I see it. I envy because you look like you just love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk about your journey with running because you're not a lifelong runner.
No, I'm a 7-year runner. I'm 51. When I was 44 is when I ran my first mile. I'm sure I ran miles when I was in high school or when I was a little kid, but it really started with a really inflated ego or a need. What I would say is a need to be seen as. So I was giving a talk in Portugal, And it was on mindset and, really the power of how you can shape your narratives. You shape your narratives, plug for the book. But the idea is that, what you tell yourself is what you'll believe and what you'll become. And so it wasn't even part of the talk. I just said, let me give you an example. I'm a 6'8", 250-pound guy. If I wanted to run a marathon today, I could, if I had the right mindset. And, I didn't think much of it. And I get on a plane and I'm flying home and I'm thinking to myself, can I really run a marathon? Like, I had never run a day in my life. I had never, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, that would be incredible. I'm going to run a marathon. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run a marathon, and then I'll be a marathon runner, and then I'll be able to tell people I ran a marathon. That would add such credibility to me when I walk into a room. I'm saying completely ego-based. And so I'm on the plane, and I'm like, if you're going to run a marathon, what marathon do you run? And immediately, I had never followed running. I was like, I'm going to run the Boston Marathon. That's what I'm going to do. And I thought you could just go online and sign up like you would a 5K or something, right? So I get online, and it's like, oh, you can't just sign up. You got to qualify. And I was like, all right, well, whatever. I'll qualify for it. How hard can it be? Well, the qualifying time at that point was 3 hours and 10-minute marathon. I'm like, that seems really fast. I have a pretty big ego. That seems fast. So I was like, all right, Boston's out. You know what? I'll run the New York City Marathon. And this is a shift moment. Shift standing for see how I find truth moment, this very moment. Because I don't run if this doesn't happen. So I'm like, all right, what's the next marathon? I'll run the New York City Marathon. That's what I'll do. I'll run the New York City Marathon. And so I get online on the New York City Marathon. I just Google it, and I find I'm on the plane still. And I Google, New York City Marathon. And in this one, you can get in by lottery, or you can qualify, or you can write a check for charity. So there's 3 options. And it just so happened, anybody that knows anything about marathons knows that the window for this New York City Marathon is only open for like 3 weeks. It's open for 21 days. You enter the lottery, and if you get in, you get in. If you don't, you don't, right? Well, you get like 150 to 200,000 people that enter the lottery, and there's only about 10,000 spots given, if that many spots given. And it just so happens, I'm on the plane, I would Google it, it's during the lottery window. So I'm like, I put my name in, I hit send, I close my laptop, I take a nap, I don't think about it ever again. That feeling, when you have that burst of inspiration, like this moment of like clarity, it comes and it goes. Well, it came, and as soon as I shut my laptop, it left. And so I get home, and I continue on with my life. And about 2 months later, a month and a half later, I'm in Texas, and I'm stopping at a Buc-ee's. And you're a Texas guy, so you know Buc-ee's, right?
Oh, buddy.
God, I love me some Buc-ee's, right? It's my lifelong dream to just work at Buc-ee's when I'm done, when I'm retired. I love me some Buc-ee's. And so anyway, I'm at Buc-ee's, and I'm getting gas. And I'm standing at the pump, and I'm scrolling through my phone, and I get an email. And it's from the New York City Roadrunners Association. It says, congratulations, you have won an opportunity to run the New York City Marathon in November. And I'll be honest with you, I had forgotten that I had entered it, and I was like, oh, I don't really want to run a marathon. Like, and so I was like, if I delete this right now, nobody knows. Like nobody knows I entered it. Nobody knows I didn't get in. I just I did the exact worst thing. I posted it on Facebook. I was like, I'm going to run the New York City Marathon because I wanted to tell people I was going to run the New York City Marathon. I had never run a 5K, a half marathon. I'd never run anything. And so I sign up, I do all the paperwork, whatever, I sign up. I do a little bit of training, but it didn't really matter because how hard could a marathon be? And I really was just trying to get the medal. All I cared about was the medal. So I show up on November 3rd and I run the New York City Marathon. I did basically no real training runs. I don't do anything. I don't run a 5K or anything in the lead up. I just show up and I run. It took me 5 hours and 59 minutes. It was the worst experience of my entire life. I had never done anything so painful, so horrible, so stupid in my entire life. But I crossed the finish line and I had a medal. That's all I cared. And I told everybody I ran the New York City Marathon. I mean, I wore that medal around like I was Flavor Flav. It did not matter. I wore it everywhere I went. I wore it to church. I wore it to work. I wore it like it was my badge of honor, and my ego could not get any bigger. And the following year, so that's it. I'm one and done. I'm never going to run this again. Well, the problem was when other people see you doing things, even if it's for the wrong reasons, they don't see the intent. They just see the outcome. And so people saw me and like, oh, my God, you ran exactly what I wanted to happen. People are like, oh, my God, that's incredible. You ran the New York City Marathon. And I was like, that's right, I did. Well, the problem was my friends were like, oh, we're going to do it now. And I was like, well, crap, I don't want you to do it, because if you do it, then I got to do it again, and I don't want to do it again. I really just wanted the medal. I don't need 2 medals. I only need 1. So I signed up again, didn't get in on lottery. Had to write a check this time for $2,500. I don't do any of the training. My brother and my friends, they do the training. They finish the marathon in about 4 hours and 20 minutes. I do it again with no training, no nothing. I finish the marathon in 5 hours and 50 minutes. And there's a really long walk from when you finish the marathon to where you go see your friends and family. After you cross the finish line, you have to walk through these crowds through Central Park. And I had this epiphany, I had this realization, I had this shift moment. God talked to me and was like, what did you just do? Like, you're not even living up to the values you set. You're a fraud. You're telling people that life is about becoming version 2.0. It's about betterment. It's not about achievement. You know, betterment without achievement without betterment is solely for the ego. And all you're cared about, you just want the achievement because you want a big ego. You don't want to get better. You don't want to push yourself. And I was like, yeah. And I had this realization. So I'd been running for a year. I had 2 marathons, but I was still the same person. I had 2 medals, but I was the same person. And coming out of that corral in New York, walking to meet my friends, I was like, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. And it's not that I wasn't running anymore. I'm gonna put my ego in the closet, and I'm gonna see how much better I can get. Not just better in like as a runner, but can I be more disciplined in how I eat? Can I show up fully to train? Can I make difficult decisions at 4 a.m. when I don't want to run? Can I literally change who I am to become a better version and use running just as a vehicle? And that was 6 years ago. My first one was 7 years ago, 6 years ago, and 54 marathons in, a full Ironman, 2 50-milers. And I don't say that to impress you. I say that to impress upon you that what running has done for me, it's absolutely changed my life, not just physically. And physically it certainly has. But mentally, the reason I run so much, and I do so many of these crazy runs, and I've done so many really hard challenges, is because it challenges me to grow in ways that I never have before. And it's not me against the other 50,000 people that ran with me in London this year, or ran with me in Japan last year. It's me against me, and it's me against the version of myself from last year. And can I face the adversities, and can I run? And I'm being tested right now. I'm getting ready to run Australia, and I've been having some health problems, and part of me is like, just give it up. But no, it's the adversity right now that makes me excited. It's knowing that it's getting harder and harder for me as I get better and better. The time gap is now I run a 3-hour and 10-minute marathon as opposed to a 6-hour marathon. Well, the time difference between what it takes to go from 3:10 to 3:05 to take 5 minutes off is 10 times harder than it was for me to go from 6 to 3. And so I have to keep challenging myself. So that's a very long answer about how I got into running, but it's the most important. It's one of the most important things in my life.
And one of the things that I was going to ask you on that is, as you started to tee up the challenge, I know you've got a great podcast. You just interviewed Matt Frazier.
Yeah.
I was like, when are you going to do a High Rocks?
Soon.
Because that's only an 8K.
Very soon. So once I'm on a quest to do the world majors. So I've done New York 6 times. 7 times. I've done Chicago 5 times. I've done London, Japan, Germany. The only one I haven't done is Boston. And that's because you have to qualify for Boston. And I have, as fast as I've gotten, I haven't gotten to the qualifying time yet. I missed it in London by 1 minute. So I needed a 3:25. I finished at 3:26. And then, so all I had was Boston, but then they added another world major, Australia. So now I'm doing Australia. And once I get Australia and Boston, I think I'm done marathons, and I'm going right into the High Rocks for sure. The only problem with High Rocks is you got to do burpees. Jeez.
I mean, you got to do burpees, but you've got a massive advantage on the wall balls.
Yeah,
in the
that's right.
row.
That's right. That's what Matt Frazier said to me. Matt was like, "This." I was doing wall balls next to him. We did 2 workouts. We did one the night before, and then we went to dinner, and then we did one the next day. And he was like, "You have such an advantage on the wall balls, the rowing, and the assault bike." And I was like, "Yeah, I do. Maybe I can beat him on this." Yeah, I could not. That was not that did not happen.
I would say even your ability to be running marathons is going to give you such a leg up in that sport because you're only running 1Ks with the obstacle. So your tank, you've got such a big tank on there.
Yeah.
I actually want to ask you about something you said there before we dive into the book. You talked about missing it by a minute.
Yeah.
How was that internally? How did you manage that? Because yes, you did your best, but you were so close.
Ooh, yeah, that was I had trained so hard for that marathon. I have a great coach named Mario Forelli. He's one of the best in the world at coaching marathon runners. He coaches all professionals, and he's a friend of mine. And I trained like I had never trained before, and I had this thing in the bag. I mean, I needed a 325 to qualify, but you really probably need like a 320, a 318 to get in because there's so many people that qualified. Then they have this cutoff. I had this in the bag. I had run 20-mile runs I need a 7:30 pace. I think I was running 20-mile runs at a 7:10 pace comfortably. And so I showed up and I went out of the gate too fast. Again, my ego took over. I needed to go out at a 7:30 pace, 7:35 pace, and then slowly creep up. Well, I went out because I was excited. I had done the training. I was like, it was a beautiful day. The crowd was there. It was London. And I went out at a 7:20, 7:15 pace. And after like 3 or 4 miles, I'm like, I can hold this pace. Like the hell with 7:25 qualifying, the hell with 7:20, getting in. I'm literally gonna run a I might run a 3:05 marathon. And so I go out 4 miles, I'm flying, 5 miles, I'm flying, I'm feeling good. I pass my wife at the 10-mile mark. She's like, yeah, I'm in a zone. Well, listen, I came out of that zone really, really fast around mile 20. And it was so disappointing because I knew with 2 miles left that I was going to be a minute short. Like I could see it. And so, people that don't understand running, they're like, Chad, you missed it by a minute. You couldn't make up a minute over 26 miles. And no, I couldn't make up a minute over the last 5 miles. And I was and so what was just the feeling of missing it by a minute wasn't the disappointing part. It's not the one that sent me into the ditch. What sent me into the ditch after that race was I missed it by a minute because of my ego. Because I didn't follow the process. I fell in love, and I preach this. I preach, divorce the outcome, fall in love with the behaviors, fall in love with the process. And in the moment, I got obsessed with the outcome and forewent the entire process in my beliefs. When if I just stuck to the plan, if I just did what I had prepared to do and I planned to do, and when the ego told me, you got this, like you can do better than this, like I should not have leaned into my ego. So I was more disappointed that I didn't eat my own dog food in that moment of what I teach other people to do, which is love the process, love the behaviors, and let the outcome become what the outcome is going to become. And there's times to redline it, and there's times to not, and this was not a time to redline it.
I love it. Well, one, I appreciate your just kind of vulnerability sharing that. I also say, like, you can let a moment like that break you. You're like, I'm just kind of done. Like that was it, or it's a learning experience. And resilience is lost without the review.
Yeah, I love that. And resilience is realized more than it's learned, right? And what I mean by that is you realize how resilient you have been in your life when you look back at your life and says, I've survived 100% of the obstacles I faced, and this is just going to be another obstacle that I've faced. What happened though is in pushing myself to the extreme, I tore both of my basically not my adductor muscles, but I had a basic bilateral sports hernia. So I couldn't walk for months. Like I couldn't run. I could not run. This was in April of last year. I just started being able to rerun like consistently in the last month or two. And so what it cost me was not just was not just the minute, but it cost me about 7 months of fitness and training. And so, I still weightlifted and I still did some CrossFit in there, but I couldn't run. And so now I'm making up for it. But it's a lesson that God has taught me and has put in front of me for a reason. And the reason is, one, this setback is only going to make the comeback even better. That's my word of the year, is comeback. But it's really going to humble me that, success that you build and success that you have over your life, it can be taken from you at any point. You're not guaranteed it. It can be literally ripped away. And I can look at the book of Job, and the book of Job is he lost everything. But the idea is it can be taken from you so fast. And so you gotta remember to have gratitude for those moments, but also understand that success disease is a real thing. And you got to be really careful. So for me, it's taught me lessons on multiple fronts. It also gave me a deeper appreciation for the ability to be able to run, because the last 7 months without being able to run had put me in a bad mental space.
I can imagine. And your part right there reminded me, I learned something years ago from Donald Miller around Joseph.
Yep.
The ego led him to brag about his dream. His brother throws him in the pit.
Yep.
He rises up to the top, something outside of his control, accused of rape, thrown into prison.
That's right.
Rises back and has an opportunity. So it's like anything can be taken away. Any piece in the story can keep pivoting.
Yeah.
If you keep going. One of the things you mentioned at the beginning of the show I want to hit on is shift.
Yeah.
And you mention it multiple times throughout your book of making this shift. Talk to us about this concept.
Yeah.
Where did you start to identify it? Really, what does it mean for the readers?
Yeah. So shift stands for see how I find truth. See how I find truth. So I think the idea of shift moments people have had for a long time. I certainly am not the one who coined the name, the mindset, the concept of shift. But I think the idea of shifting means finding truth in different things. And what people don't realize, I think, or what I shouldn't say what people, what I struggled to realize was that I was the author of my life. I was the narrator of my life. And what I had written about my life, the words that I had told myself, the stories that I had created about myself, they dictated how I felt and how I saw the world and how I perceived the world. And I had written a story of victimhood. I was less than because I don't have a college degree. I barely graduated high school. I was raised by a single mother. I don't have a father. Like every story that you can think of, negative story, I had written it for myself. I believed all of that to be true. I found truth in these stories that were not true. And this is the hard part, is just because you believe it to be true doesn't make it actually true. So I created this entire narrative around a truth that simply was a lie. And I didn't realize that. I didn't realize it was a lie, because when you tell yourself something enough, it actually starts to become true to you. And so you live your life based on this lie. And so and nobody ever goes back and fact checks their stories. They just keep adding more to it. The way your brain is programmed is your reticular activating system, or your RAS for short. You tell yourself a story. You create a story, whether it's true or not. And I created a story as a 5-year-old kid, and that became true. I cemented, this is the story. This is why my father left. This is the type of father type of father I have. This is who he is. This is how he is. This is who I am. And so there goes the groundwork of the first story. Then your RAS finds every supporting evidence to make that true. So, man, I'm unloved. Oh, see how that person just walked by me? That stranger just walked by me. Didn't even say hi. See, I must be ugly and unloved. Oh, that girl wouldn't go out with me? I'm ugly and unloved. And so now you get supporting evidence to make what you believe to be true even more true. I see it all the way around me. Well, shift happens, and I believe it's as much of a spiritual thing as just a life thing, where God puts these moments to give you a gut check, fact check moment. Hey, maybe you should fact check that story you're telling yourself. Maybe you should fact check that, right? And so he had put these moments in my life, but if you're not desperate enough to look for them, then you don't look. So what I mean by that is, I was living in this misery, but when you're living in misery and victimhood, if that's all you ever see, you don't actually know that there's better for you. And so you're blissfully unaware. Even if you're miserable, you're blissfully, ignorantly unaware that there could be a better life. I was like, no, I'm not going to read a book. It wouldn't help me. No, I'm not going to go to that seminar. No, I'm not going to apply myself. It's not going to help me anyway. There's nothing else out there for me. And then God shows you this little bit of glimpse, this little bit of light that says, just look, just come on, please, just fact check this story. And I would just let them pass me by. And then when I started to realize, wait a minute, there's a lot of these moments that I can choose to view things differently. Wayne Dyer said, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change. Well, there's shift moments where I choose to look at something from a different perspective. And so when I chose to see this shift moment of, man, this story that I'm telling myself is not serving me at my highest level, man, what if there was another story? And boom, oh my gosh, there's an opportunity for a different story. And so when you have these shift moments, it's finding truth. So now, instead of finding truth in I'm an unlovable 5-year-old fatherless kid, now I find truth in, man, I was raised by an amazing single mother who put herself through school, had 3 kids, put herself through, job after job to become a practitioner. And man, I must have some of her DNA in me. There must be better for me. If she can do it, I should have watched her. Or I find truth in the fact that I can control my destiny. I find truth in the fact that I am lovable, that I am smart enough, even though I don't have the traditional path that most people have. And so you're going to find truth in something. These shift moments help you change how you find the truth that serve you best.
And your book does such a phenomenal job of teaching people how to do that effectively. I got 2 things I want to talk about in here to really drive home these points before we start to wrap up. The first is where you talk about high stakes. And this really stood out to me of this idea for me, because I've always loved the idea of pressure is a privilege.
Yeah.
Right? If you're doing something that matters, and you talk about really great stories have high stakes. Mm-hmm. And what are those stories we're telling ourselves? Talk to me a little bit about why those high stakes matter in our personal lives or our job.
I think for me, because this is such a great question. And the idea of high stakes is, I think it's about having something that is so audacious and so challenging that it forces you to change not just how you see things, but it forces you to change who you are. It forces you to, let me give you an example. So think about something, Jake, in your life that has really high stakes. What have you done? What do you think? What do you want? What do you want to achieve? What do you want to become that's really high stakes?
Man, I think about my speaking career and the goals I've set because of the people I want to help.
Yeah.
And I know who I was 6 years ago was not the person that can step on stage and make that impact or the next level I want to get to.
So that's high stakes. It's high stakes for you to think that I'm going to step on the stage and I'm going to be an influencer. I'm going to be an instrument of influence that's going to change people's lives. That's high stakes. You know how much easier it would be for you to say, I'm going to get me a 9 to 5, and I'm gonna stock away 10% of my 401k, and I'm going to go to Bed Bath & Beyond on Saturday, and I might do some Home Depot runs on Sunday, and I'm going to have a very easy, comfortable life. There's nothing wrong with that. That is amazing if that's the life you want. But there's not as much pressure to become that and have that as there is to say, I'm going to be in the 1%. I'm going to be in the 1% that's going to stand on the stage and know that there's a possibility that 50% of the room doesn't like me or doesn't want to listen to me or doesn't buy into what I say, and I'm going to have the courage to be disliked. Well, in order to have that, in order to have high stakes, for me, having those high stakes, well, there's a lot of pressure involved. But what you said is pressure to me is the greatest thing in the world, because to me it forces me. I don't have a choice. It forces me to reevaluate who I am and to evolve to the next perfect person and that next version of myself. And Jesus believed. I know this isn't a faith podcast, and I'm okay. Certainly not putting my faith on people.
We are bonded in that faith.
Yeah, but Jesus believed that your life was to be above all else, above everything else. Jesus believed that your life was to be devoted to self-transformation. That's what he believed. That's what he taught. That's what he believed. And the idea is I'm going to continue transforming myself. And the higher the stakes, the bigger the transformation. The smaller the stakes, the smaller the transformation. And so I think people have to find what we call just manageable difficulties, things that force them to change how they look at things, force them to operate differently. And for me, I love the idea of high stakes. I want to go big. And what I mean by go big, it's not about the things. It's about, I have 30 years. I'm 51. I didn't start this transformation of my life until I was, into my 20s, mid 20s, or late 20s. I have 30 years of work to make up because I did not have high stakes for the first 25 years of my life. I had very low stakes, but I had low self-love. And so now I have high stakes because I have high self-love and I have high belief and faith that no matter the stakes, I believe I can transform myself to achieve and become whatever is needed to have those things in my life.
I love it. I love it. One of the things I want to wrap up is if anybody hasn't already gathered just listening to you, man, you've got energy, but you have a just voice of encouragement. Like I laugh on my Instagram. You're like my chief encourager. I love it. And
it's easy to encourage you because you're such a badass. like every day you're like doing something.
Chasing the bar you set, which I love. Like that's one of the things I appreciate about you is one of the people, like, we're just now connecting, but like I see you setting a high standard that I love. And I'm like, keep making that high standard, keep raising it. Where am I? Like, how do I keep checking that? And so physically, by example, you set great standards, you encourage people, but you also very, very much, your book is an encouragement to somebody and it's a game plan, but I know encouraging your kids is a big deal. Talk about the importance of you. I know you've got a routine with them about the words you use with others, especially helping them to cement or create better stories internally.
Yeah, this is so good. I think, most parents, most coaches, most leaders think their job is to motivate. And I could not disagree more. I am not a motivator for my kids. I am not a motivator for my employees. I am not a motivator for my clients. My job is not to motivate because to motivate means to push. Motivate means to push. And I can't spend my life pushing you to become the next version. That's just not my role. Plus, it doesn't work. It only works in short bursts. We know this. So I don't want to be a motivator. I want to be a facilitator. That's a much different role. So to be a facilitator means, I have Lauren, right? Lauren, amazing employee, like one of the best, one of the salt of the earth human beings. I do not want to motivate her every day by telling her, all right, you can do this, Lauren, you can do this, right? Because my outside affirmations for her are not nearly as powerful as her inside affirmations. So can I facilitate a way for her to rewrite her narrative? I can't write my kid's story for them. I can't write Lauren's story for her, but I can certainly facilitate and give her the pen for her to write a great story. So the way you do this is you have to be really curious. You got to ask a ton of questions. And you got to ask questions in a way that gets them to trip over the truth that there's more. And so for my kids, it's important. I'll give you a really quick story. I know we're running out of time, but really quick story. For me, and I talk about this in the book, but because I grew up without a father, the one thing I always knew I wanted to be in this life was a father. I didn't know anything else in life, nothing. I was 17. I knew I was going to be a father, and I knew I was going to be an amazing father. This was going to be my life's calling because I grew up without one. And, when my kids were about 5, they were dancing. When it was a day, they were dancing around the room, and Madison had run over and danced near me. And I said, Madison, I love you. And I said, and I don't know why I said this. I don't know where it comes from. I think it was a God thing. I said, I love you. Tell me why. And she looked at me and she said, 5 years old. She said, because you're my dad and you have to. And I don't know why it hit me so hard, but loving her is not a requirement. Loving her is a choice. And there's a million reasons why I love her. My father, if my father was required to love me, he wouldn't have been gone for 40 years. Parents aren't required to love their kids. They love their kids because they choose to love their kids. Love is always a choice. It's not a requirement, in my opinion. And so I said, no. I said, no, man. I said, no, really. I don't love you because you're my kid. I love you because why? Why do I love you? And I pushed her. She was 5 years old. And she's quick. She's quick-witted even back then. She just looks like me. She goes, because I'm awesome. And her whole face lights up. I was like, yeah, that's right. It's one of the many qualities I love about you. You are awesome. And then Mackenzie, my other daughter, came running and she goes, well, I'm awesome too. And I said, yeah, you are. And that was when they were 5. They're now 20. And it was just I'm awesome. Now it's because I'm a great Christian, because I'm a great daughter, because I think really well, because I do great things, because I challenge myself. And so what's happening is I'm facilitating them telling better stories to themselves. I'm facilitating them writing a story of resilience, of perseverance, of grit, of self-love. I'm not saying it. I'm not saying, hey, you're great, you're awesome. Now that's fine, but remember, just because I say it to Lauren, just because I say it to my kids, doesn't mean they digest it, but they will always digest the stories they tell themselves. And the problem is most people tell themselves stories that make them feel less than. Why can't I be smart enough? I'm such an idiot for making a mistake. Gosh, if I was only prettier, if I only had more money. Well, those are the negative stories. Well, now I'm pulling the ultimate flim flam, because I'm forcing them, I'm facilitating them to tell better stories. And that becomes their Wonder Woman cape. And when the world goes to beat the shit out of you and tell you and convince you that you're not enough, they had this Wonder Woman cape that made them believe that they're worthy. Well, because they told themselves they were worthy. And so if you want to be a great leader, you want to be a great parent, you want to be a great friend, a great sister, don't be a motivator. Be a facilitator of different truths. Get them to tell themselves a different story, in my opinion.
No, I love that. And that, I mean, we've talked briefly on the show and our old parents podcast, Raising Competitors, of just asking questions. Yeah. Like post-game rides, ask questions, because that's going to be it. And I loved how you shared that in the book, and I really appreciate you sharing it. It had a whole other life to it when I could hear you telling it live versus hearing your voice as I was reading it. I think
people want their kids and their loved ones to know they love them. And I think it's important. I think it's important for people to express love and say, hey, I love you. I want to make you understand that. But I don't think that's nearly as important as self-love. And I think if there's one pandemic in this world that ruins people more than any, it's the pandemic of lack of self-love. And we tell ourselves stories that make us believe that we're unlovable. And I want my kids to know I love them, because that's important. But the longest relationship they're going to ever have in their life is not with me. It's going to be with themselves. So it better be a loving one. And so to me, if I really love my kids, and I really love my employees, and I really love my spouse, and I really love the people I work with, then I better make sure that I allow the best relationship in their life to be the one with themselves and the one with me second. I have to be willing to play second in that relationship.
And that goes back to the very beginning of the show when you talked about letting the ego get out of the way. Yeah. Because the ego says you got to love me first.
That's right. And love me most.
And love me most.
Yeah.
Chad, man.
If it's not, then I'm playing. And obviously, my faith says my love is towards God more than anything in the world. But I think the idea is, that's a hard pill to swallow, because the need to be seen as, and the need to feel connected, and the need to feel loved wants me to have you put me before yourself. And if I really love, in the same vein, Jake, if I really love my kids, I'll love myself more than I love my kids. And I could ask you to write down 10 things you love in this life more than anything. 10 things. And I'll say, just write down 10 things you love most in this world. Nobody, very few people, their name will not be anywhere on that list. It's I love my dogs, I love my husband, I love my kids, I love my self-love is not something that we openly promote in this world, because we think it's ego. Ego stands for edging God out. It's not about God, it's about me. What God wants is for you to love yourself first so you can love everybody else fully. Sorry.
No, dude, I love that. In one of my keynotes, we talk about the most important thing you do as a leader is the difficult, consistent work to improve every day, to pursue your best.
Yeah.
Because that is not selfish. That allows you to be selfless, and serve others.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So good.
So,
So good, brother.
dude, all right, this has been great. We've got links to your book in the show notes, to your Instagram, LinkedIn, Cannonball Moments, all LinkedIn. Where, if anywhere else, should we be connecting with you?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of all the socials. I know people have their opinions about social media. I love social media. So Sanschagrin Chad, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, MySpace. You call it, I got it. I'm saying you can find me and Tom next to each other in MySpace. Some people are like, "What the hell is MySpace?" I'm on. The only one I'm not on is X or Twitter, whatever it's called now, and has no political thing. It's just literally I couldn't understand it like 20 years ago, and I just refused to figure it out. So I don't tweet or X or whatever they do, but that's the only thing I don't do.
The only reason I'm on that channel is during sports. I like to watch the game behind the game with announcers and guys breaking down stuff that's happening after the fact.
And that's what they do? Is that what they do on Twitter, on X?
I mean, if you follow the right accounts, right?
Oh, I'm at that.
So I have some guys I went to high school with that played in the NFL, and so their accounts, they'll break down film of here's what's really going on with this play. And as a nerd of football, like I just love the behind the scenes.
Oh, well, if you're a nerd of football, I should send you a helmet to put behind you, replace that purple thing you got back there. I should send you a crimson tide helmet there, some in Alabama. I'm just saying, if you're a lover of football.
I mean, right now, your quarterback Milrose, we're recording this, is throwing it to my receiver Beck at Senior Bowl stuff.
Yeah, that's right. That's awesome.
But hey, we may make a game. My wife is an Oklahoma Sooner. I know they're playing in Tuscaloosa in the next year or two, so we'll be heading there.
Well, we'll tailgate. I have a condo down there. We have season tickets, so that'll be another like advent calendar countdown to hang out with Jake. If I get to hang out with you in person, oh, forget about it.
I'm checking your post on social. We're gonna cross roads at an airport or on a stage at some point before then. I bet
at some point I'm gonna hug you like we're best friends. I'm gonna come running across Jake with my big.
Let's go.
You're gonna be like, who is this tall orangutan running towards me?
I will know exactly who it is and who's coming. Dude, thanks, great spending time with you. Thanks for being on the show.
I appreciate you. Much love and gratitude for you. Thank you.